Good afternoon. It's not raining, but I still have all my podcasting stuff set up, and I threatened to tell you about this guitar, so I guess today is a good day to do it. The simple way to explain this is the oldest of the guitars that I've made that I still own. Saying it's a guitar I made is a potentially contentious thing. There's always a debate about where do you draw the line, right? So if you have bought a guitar and then changed the strings, did you build that guitar? I think most people would say no, you haven't. If you've modified it by changing the pickups, did you build that guitar? Probably not. If you modified it by changing the tuners and the bridge and the pickups and done the wiring yourself by hand, did you build that guitar? I mean, you could make an argument. If you bought a kit and assembled it by following the instructions without doing anything other than that, did you build that guitar? Well, yes, mechanically you did, but you had no design input. Guitars I'd built previous to this, I had purchased a kit, I had painted the body, I had then assembled the parts that came in the kit following the instructions, which means doing the wiring typically, and then I had done some setup work on the instrument to get the nut and bridge and everything in the right place, and that had been pretty much it. Now, this guitar, I don't know whether to say is or was a kit guitar. The reason I say was might be appropriate is that there are 4 unmodified parts from the kit that are still attached to this guitar, and they are that metal plate that holds the output jack, just a curved piece of flat metal, and the 4 screws that are holding that to the body. Literally nothing else that's on this guitar is how it came in the kit. In my mind, I designed and built this guitar, and if you don't agree with that, well, I've just given you the context to make your own mind up. I don't care what you think, I guess, is what I'm saying. What it obviously isn't is a Telecaster, because only Fender can make a Telecaster. But you could say that it leans strongly in that direction for inspiration. I built this in 2020. I was trying to get back into guitar because I had a lot of time on my hands in the pandemic, as many did. And none of the guitars I had at the time were working great for me ergonomically. They were quite difficult to set up and basically wall hangers at that point. And the ones that were generally playable, you would have to play standing up because they were these spiky shaped guitars that, metal and those kind of genres of people like to play. And obviously I'd bought them because I liked them. But the issue was that I smashed up my collarbone a few times between when I purchased them and 2020. And at that time, I had relatively weak muscle structure in my shoulder, which I thought was causing me the problem that I couldn't play the guitar stood up with a strap on. It would just hurt my shoulder and arm really badly after less than a minute even. And so I thought, okay, I need something I can play sat down then. And the only kind of guitar we had that was comfortable, as in would sit nicely on your legs when you sat down, was a Les Paul. And ergonomically, I've never really got on with the Les Paul body shape. Something is just slightly off for me to play it sat down. Stood up, it's fine, but of course it's very heavy, and as I said, I couldn't do that. So I remembered that several years previously I built a Telecaster style kit guitar, and I'd enjoyed both the process of building it and playing it once it was done, particularly sat down. I hadn't particularly enjoyed playing it stood up, but since it now seemed I wasn't going to be able to play stood up, I thought, okay, I'll just get another Tele kit and assemble it. So I did that. in the intervening time, I moved continents, so I had to buy a telly kit off of a different supplier than I'd previously used, and the parts in the kit were of much lower quality than the parts in the kit I'd had previously, which was very annoying and caused me to start modifying things to try and make them better than they were. And that eventually, after several years, has led to the guitar you see before me. But I'll explain how we got here starting now, I guess. First thing I'd remembered about the telly is it would sit nicely in that corner of my arm there, and I didn't find it ergonomically difficult to find a comfortable pose. And that's still true with this one. I actually have never played a Fender Telecaster. I don't even know if I played a Squier. I don't think so. So I actually don't know if a real telly would do this, or if these knockoff kit ones are different shape or whatever. Certainly this one's a different shape because I reshaped it. When I say I've not played a Telecaster, I own a Fender Acoustasonic Telecaster, but that's really not the same shape as in this area at least, as a traditional solid body one. So yeah, I'm happy with this part of the telly body and the part it intersects your leg, and I guess I don't care about this part here because it doesn't touch me. But I did find the lack of a rib cut for that like a Strat has quite annoying, and I found the sharpness of the lower horn on the back perhaps a little bit annoying when you're trying to play uphill. They like rarely play at the dusty end of the fretboard. One of the early things I did to change this kit is reprofile the neck securing area, so you can't use a plate to hold the neck on anymore, and you have to use recessed washers with the screws in. I have added a belly carve, and I pruned this area a little bit to make it a little bit more comfortable if you end up playing in that area of the neck. And so pretty small changes, and the way I did that was by actually putting the original neck on it. So for the belly cut, I put the original neck on it. I sort of then drew a pen line where I felt it pushing against me, removed that material with rasps and sandpaper, tried again, decided to take more off if I needed to. This actually has a much less aggressive rib carve than most guitars because it's literally the minimum I needed to be comfortable. I'm pleased that 5 years later, and having lost a fair amount of weight compared to then, it's still comfortable. So, that's a pleasant piece of luck. Now, the neck that came in the kit, I still have. It's on another guitar, and I'll show you that in another episode. But it took me, I must have put maybe 20 hours of work overall into that neck to get it from the state it came to me in to what I regard as pleasantly playable state. It really was bad, and if I hadn't had all of the fret filing kit and nut slot carving gear, I mean, I did replace the nut as well as that was one of the first things I did because the plastic nuts was just terrible to work with. But anyway, so I had to fix the neck from the kit, which is difficult. I changed the tuners out I'm looking over at it in the corner of the room there because I can still see it, for split post tuners. So I have split post tuners on this neck as well. And then I changed the bridge because I don't like the real Telecaster bridge, the one with the sides here. I find certain times I want to put my hand across the saddles to mute the strings at the bridge, and that raised ashtray on those two sides gets in the way and I just felt I don't need that in my life, so I'll replace that bridge with this also 6 independent saddle bridge rather than the 3 brass ones. This is a string through body. It's string through body only on this bridge. So I had to obviously drill through the string holes and mount and remount the hole for the ferrules, put the ferrules in, and redo the mounting holes, because the mounting holes for the original bridge, and these are in a different place. For the electronics, I did originally fit the pickups that came in the kit and the wiring harness that came in the kit. My beef with it, I actually don't have a particular concern with the quality of the stuff that was in the kit, but situationally in the house I was in at the time, there was a lot of electrical interference and a lot of magnetic interference. It's a relatively old neighborhood, so there are quite a lot of old school transformers with big coils of wire emitting magnetic fields. So you could turn the guitar with the original pickups and get all kinds of wild tones on it, just from the magnetic interference that was in the neighborhood. So I changed the pickups out for an EMG T52 set, which it's a really nice sound. If you've got a T-style guitar and you're looking for the kind of classic Telecaster tone, and you don't mind getting it in a non-traditional way, and you don't mind it being noiseless, which some people do mind actually, then I would recommend you give it a go. It's a good time, or at least in my opinion, it's a great tone. This switch knob here is 3D printed, and I only 3D printed that this year, so it's the newest addition to this guitar. This pick guard is handmade leather. I have another one for this guitar that is elaborately tooled with a dragon design on it, which I don't generally have fit to the guitar, and I don't have it fit now because I want this guitar to be played. I wanted all the guitars I make to be played, and so I'm going to tell you a slightly weird design choice I've made that you wouldn't make if you were making guitars commercially. But anyway, so when you're making a guitar and shaping it, you're generally trying to make it as smooth and as refined as possible. And my concern with this guitar was making it so perfect that I would be afraid to use it. So I'll tell you now, I knew going in that it would take me maybe 6 or 7 months to completely finish it to where I was happy with it. And I thought, if I've taken 6 or 7 months to make an instrument that is within my tolerances, meets the definition of perfection, I'm gonna, including having a perfect finish on it, I'm gonna want to hang it on a wall and never touch it, because it's gonna be, I know I'll be devastated if I ever ruined the finish or whatever on it. And that's not what I wanted. I wanted the thing to be played. So before I finished carving all of this and got it as smooth as I knew that I wanted to, and then I deliberately put a ding in it here before I did the finishing work, so that it would be already and for all time always a bit beaten up, and I would therefore not feel like I had to put on the white curator's gloves and never really play it. I could do whatever, take it with me, give it to let my friends play it, and no one would need to feel too precious about the thing, even though it is still like nothing's really changed. It still was months to make, and it was made to be within my tolerances a perfect instrument. But because I put a blemish in it, I do think it has made me feel more comfortable to use it and to let it be used. And in keeping with that vibe is the the slightly not perfect leather pickup guard. Anyway, so that's it for the intentional flaws in this guitar. There's also a major unintentional one that I've chosen not to repair to remind me of the perils of carelessness. So the choice to switch to EMGs was relatively late in the game. As I say, had there not been a situational problem with the pickups that came with it, I would have stuck with passives and probably been happy enough. But when I decided to put EMGs in it, I routed this recessed plate that holds two 9-volt batteries, so I can run 18-volt EMG system, which is what I like to do with EMGs. I think they just sound a little bit nicer with a bit more headroom to the preamp. It doesn't make them any louder. For anyone who's curious, it just means that the amplification is happening in a part of the op amps that is less prone to distortion, so you get a even purer sound. And EMGs can be run on up to 36 volts, so I'm not doing anything nuts by giving them 18 volts. Anyway, and I had tested on a previous EMG guitar I owned, not a Tele, so not the T52 system, but on one with 89R and 81, I think it is. And I liked that on more volts, so I thought, okay, I'll just put 18 in this to start with, rather than just cram the 9-volt battery in behind this control plate, which would have been the easier thing to do. Anyway, because I'd chosen to route this new cavity, I need to connect that cavity to the controls section, which is just a slot here, and that meant drilling through the body at an angle. And I had carefully lined things up and measured the drill size I need and calculated that the path the drill should take. But during drilling, the bit decided to, what we call in the trade, wander, which means it goes up. Either the torque or the grain of the wood that you're drilling through causes the tip to go in a different direction, and if you're not paying attention and you just follow it and allow that change of direction to happen, then you're not drilling anymore in the line that you thought you were. And that's what happened to me. So there's this weird hole here you can see through the front, where I got a bit of tear out from that drilling operation, and I decided I would not try and cover it over or patch it up. I would let it be there to remind me to be a lot more careful when I'm drilling guitars in the future. So yeah, now I've confessed my sins on this guitar. I guess I shall play a little bit on it. Here's the neck pickup. And here's the bridge pickup. So as you can see, it's very clear and articulate, and the two pickups do sound very different to each other, as they do in a real traditional Telecaster. But what I find I want to do with this guitar, even though it's got such excellent clarity, is because of its like look and feel of the body, the general vibe I'm getting is a sort of more of a lo-fi thing than what I was just playing. So I'm going to change to my lo-fi preset and play something else. Play the same thing again with the same knob settings. So as you can hear, we've got a lot more gain. So I turn down the volume on the the way I like this preset on my floorboard is trying to sound like it's like you're playing this guitar and it's coming through an AM radio that from perhaps a distant station, and it's struggling to be heard. That's the tonality I want. You can judge for yourself if I got it or not, but I would find it very hard to justify why that I feel that's appropriate for this guitar, but it is. It's just what I found I want to do with it. This is one of the reasons why I own so many guitars. Is so a term we use in other parts of industry, ergonomics and whatever, affordance, that this guitar makes me want to play it in this way, and that's so that's how I play it. I can play through this preset on any of the other guitars, or I could play something I would compose on this guitar on any of the other guitars, but because of the way this guitar makes me feel and think when I'm playing it, there are things I'm going to do on this that I would not ever consider, would not have thought to do had I been playing any other instrument. And for me, that's the value of having multiple instruments, and even some where you have to fight them to some extent. So, I mean, this one, as I've said, I can only play. Well, I bought it because I thought I could only play sat down. Because it's a telly, I can only play it sat down because I didn't put a arm relief in here, so it's just too uncomfortable to play stood up for, I think, most people. And I've subsequently found out that the problem with my shoulder and being unable to play stood up was not anything to do with being too weak, because I've built this shoulder up now to stronger than it was before I broke the bone that meant it needed to be restructured. But what I now know is that as a result of that accident and the reconstructive surgery, I have worse circulation through this shoulder area, and so when I put the guitar strap on, it just cuts off the blood supply to my arm to too great an extent, and I cannot therefore play even this guitar stood up because it's too heavy and it will cut off my blood supply. I can't wear backpacks to carry stuff around, and I can't carry, shoulder bags, generally speaking, on this side. We'll talk about the next guitar in the next video, but that one is one where I tried to make a guitar as lightweight as possible, or to be very lightweight and to be comfortable for me to play sat down or stood up in terms of the ergonomics, to see if that helped. And I'm pleased to say it did. So there are guitars I can still play stood up, and that gives its own affordance. Like, there's different things I might find that I want to play differently style-wise because I'm stood up compared to if I'm sat down. And so being able to play stood up is nice. And but we'll talk about that guitar when we come to it. I will say two things. I think the setup on this guitar needs a bit of tweaking. I haven't really done it since we moved back from the US, and international transport is not the kindest thing on guitars when it's in a container ship for 6 weeks. Who knows what temperatures. So the bridge pickup isn't ideally spaced for the strings, but I'm going to play some like heavy rock type of vibe thing now, and hopefully it will still come through that the Tele bridge pickup is to some extent the sound of early heavy rock, and that's a nice reason to have one as well. So we're still on my lo-fi preset. So there you go. That's the Telecaster style hard rock version of the intro to the two-person, the podcast series where I have guests if I ever get around to recording one of those. To give you a bit more information about how I intend for that to work. I wrote that riff. I thought it's pretty cool. It's an okay length for a jingle from another podcast series. But what I want to do is, if my guest's musical, I wanted to give them the opportunity to, be the person who plays that riff or contribute to it or elaborate on it if they want to. So if I have a musical guest, you'll hear perhaps different versions of that intro tune than on any other episode. And if I have a guest who's not a musician, or who is but doesn't want to record their own version of the jingle, that's cool. But I wanted them to have a menu of like, what kind of style do you want? So if you're invited to be a guest on my podcast, and you pick, I want the lo-fi Tele sound, well, you've just heard what it's going to be like. I also have, I've got plenty of other guitars, plenty of other presets. I can make it in a variety of styles, which has been a bit of fun to develop for me. Anyway, enough about that. I hope I've told you something about this guitar and why I made it. I want to address a related question though, and I may as well do it in this video, which is occasionally asked, well, more often than I would have predicted 10 years ago before I'd started making any guitars. People ask, how should I get into making guitars? What pathway would I recommend? And although I've done a number of kits, I think I actually I wouldn't recommend that you start there. What I'd recommend you do, if you're serious about wanting to be able to make a guitar, even to be able to, well, even to just be able to assemble a kit and get a good instrument at the end, what I'd suggest you do is buy a guitar for cheap off of eBay or Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or whatever other vendors are available, and I don't care to endorse any of them really. Get yourself probably a Tele style guitar, so a T style, something like a Squire Affinity Telecaster. Before you do anything, see how well it works. Then, like, the first thing to do is to follow a online guide on how to do a setup, which means adjusting the nut, the truss rod, the neck mounting, and the saddle positions, so that the guitar has the right action height, the right neck relief, the right intonation. Practice on. You can do all of that work without having even to buy a new set of strings, unless you get unlucky and break a string during the process. So if you start from a secondhand guitar, it's unlikely to be brilliant setup when it comes to you. If you can do that and improve it, then you've shown some of the skills that you're going to need when you to come to build a guitar. The thing to do after you're comfortable doing that would be, once you think you've got that down, loosen all the strings, cut them, throw them away, get a new set of strings, loosen the truss rod so that you're not putting any strain on the neck, remove the neck from the guitar, mess up your bridge saddles completely, and wait a week, and then verify you can put the neck back on the guitar, add the strings, and get the action and intonation correct from that position. Because if you're when you're assembling a guitar, the neck will have no memory of what string tension's like on it, and the wood will have relaxed into the shape it's in when it's got no pull on it. And being able to get to a good setup from that situation is going to be a necessary thing if you're going to make a guitar from a kit or from scratch. And you'll feel better about making a guitar from scratch or assembling a guitar if you know that there's no worries about doing that part at the end, because it's quite high stakes otherwise. Once you got that down, is the next thing, the next kind of isolated skill to practice, or another isolated skill to practice, you could do these concurrently, I suppose, is unwire it and wire it back up with the same pickups and everything that it already has, but get it to work. Maybe give yourself a project of swapping the tone and volume controls. This one is set up reversed. It's not difficult to do at all, but it is, again, it's as a confidence building exercise before you have to wire a guitar up from scratch. Lightly changing the wiring of one that you already have, or just taking it apart into components and putting it back together exactly how you found it, is a good way to show to yourself that you can do those things. If you can do those things, then the rest of guitar manufacture is just woodworking, and that's 95% of that is sanding. And if you buy a kit guitar, then what you're going to have to do with it is typically sand it to get the surface nice and smooth, apply whatever finishing paint and varnishes or whatever you want to it, and then you're just into assembly. And so you can practice everything other than doing the paint job from a bare body, other than the woodworking parts, on a guitar that you've bought complete and then disassembled and put back together. And so I would say that the best way to start is to get a guitar that is cheap enough that you don't care about it, and then make sure you can strip it down to like the ideal final test would be to remove from the guitar everything that can be unscrewed or pulled away, lay them out separately on a table, as I say, release the tension in the truss rod in the neck, and then walk away for a week, come back, and then put the guitar back together so that it then works and is set up nicely. Now, it should take you about a week to get the setup right every time in that situation, because when you put the neck on and add the strings, the wood will take a while to react. Wood of the neck will take a while to react to that string tension being on there, and you will therefore need to you'll need to wait for that motion to happen. There's no shortcutting it. But yeah, that's how I would advise getting into it. And once you've got that down, like if you wanted to build this kind of modified Telecaster, then for me, whether you'd started from a kit or you'd started from a fully assembled Squire, taking it down, if you started from a fully assembled T-style guitar, taking it all apart, changed the body in this way, decided to change the electronics, upgraded the neck or not, or whatever you're doing, and then refinished it and put it together, for me, you've made a guitar. It doesn't matter that the parts of it were once a guitar of a different shape before. Like, you've done the difference. I'm willing to say this, and like this is, in my opinion, as someone who's done both things, the amount of work difference between starting with a thing that's basically this shape but needs the finer contouring put on it and all the sanding and finishing work done, or starting with something that's like a solid block of wood where you have to cut out this outline as well as do that bit of work. The difficulty increment and like the incremental work of cutting out the outline of a Telecaster body is almost nothing. I know there are probably someone out there who would say if you started from a slab and cut this, you've made the guitar, and if you started from something which had this outline cut already, you haven't made the guitar. But the difference there is pretty minimal, in my opinion, and I would say if that's where you started, irrespective of where you started, if you've done material work to the body of the guitar and assembled it, you've made a guitar. I guess it also, like, in the same way that I honestly don't care if you think I made this guitar or it's a kit guitar or however you want to classify it. It means nothing to me. My opinion of what you've done should mean nothing to you, probably. So I guess ignore everything I just said if I didn't edit it out of this podcast anyway. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed a bit of learning about how and why I made this guitar. And if you didn't, then maybe skip a few episodes of this podcast, because I'm going to tell you how and why I made another 4 instruments. Anyway, cheerio.